Hello guys. I'm gonna CNN தான் பார்க்கல CNN பார்க்கணும்.
Well, let's bring in our security and defence analyst, Professor Michael Clark. Good to see you, Michael. I spoke to the UN High Commissioner for Pakistan, based here in London, a short time ago. He seems to think that these latest explosions are skirmishes, nothing too serious. What are your thoughts? Is it just that, or could it be a breakdown of this ceasefire already?
I suspect it's more the case that it's skirmishes, and the fact that we've got some footage there of air defences going into operation. As you said, Jonathan, it's not clear if that's absolutely contemporary or maybe something that happened a couple of nights ago. But also, when air defences fire off, it's not always clear that they're firing at anything in reality. They may be firing off at something else. They might be firing at a drone, one of their own side drones, or maybe some other unidentified object. So the fact that air defences are firing in itself doesn't mean to say that anyone is being attacked. So I suspect we need to wait a little bit for this. Given that both sides have agreed to ceasefire, which has been pushed so hard, and to its credit by the United States and by the Trump administration and Marco Rubio, they were rather late getting onto this. I mean, this thing has been going on since Tuesday, but here we are on Saturday. It looks as if their words have made a difference. And what they've done is the fact that both sides didn't want this to go anywhere else, actually. That nothing is fundamentally at stake that is worth a war between them. You've only got to look at a map of the area, map of Kashmir and Pakistan and India, to see that anything that happens Kashmir has next to no bearing on the fundamental sovereignty or security of either country. And so what this was all about was credibility. Following the April the 22nd atrocity in Kashmir, the Indians felt they needed to respond because they feel that the Pakistani government is constantly backing the sort of terrorist groups that they blame for this atrocity. In this case, they were blaming Lashkar-e-Toiba and possibly the resistance front. So the Indians felt they had to do something, and both sides then feel that they keep having to establish escalation dominance, deterrence. And they were both looking for a way to draw a line on top of all of this. And it took the United States to make some statements and a lot of other countries to push in on it. And indeed, interestingly, they mentioned the role of the United Kingdom. They picked that out, which I find quite intriguing, particularly the Pakistani side did. So it takes something to sort of put a line on top of it. But both sides were looking for a line to be set on top of what they were doing. It looks as if they've established it. So good for the international community if they've arrived at that this evening.
Yeah, and let's hope that it can stick. Something else the UN High Commissioner said was there is a very easy solution to all of this, and that is let the people in Kashmir decide with a referendum. But of course, it's not that simple, is it?
No, it isn't. And I mean, as it happens, Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, clamped down on Kashmir, 5-6 years ago now, and ended the autonomous status of Jammu and Kashmir. And there's almost been a news blackout from there ever since. So it is a difficult situation. And I mean, a referendum would not solve the basic sovereignty problem, which really goes back to 1947. And Jammu and Kashmir has been, of course, a problem for both countries. It only really started to get worse in 1989, so it's not gone on continuously since 1947 in terms of attacks either side of the border. But the fact is that both sides are probably going to have to live with this. They're going to have to manage this difficult border where the majority population in Indian-controlled Kashmir is Muslim. That's the point. I mean, the population in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, as you can see there on the map, I mean that's 98%, 99% Muslim. But in the Indian-controlled Kashmir, it's more like 60% Muslim and only 40%, 35% Hindu. And then there's a Chinese element as well in Ladakh, which is to the eastern part of that whole enclave.
From a military point of view, Michael, will India have been surprised at how robust Pakistan's reaction was and their defence?
Yes, I mean, I think that the robustness they would take as risk-taking, they've got not a lot of faith in Azim Munir, who is the head of Pakistan's military. And the Pakistani military, of course, have an undue influence, it is generally thought, on the Pakistani government. And I think the Indians always thought that Munir is a risk-taker, he's reckless, and he's very aggressive. And that's the way they interpret him. But they might have been surprised, not necessarily by his rather bellicose reactions, but by the hardware that the Pakistanis brought to bear. Because as we're now discovering, they've used quite a lot of their Chinese-based technology, and the attention at the moment is focused on the J-10 fighter. This fighter is produced by the Chengdu aircraft company in China, and it looks as if one of the J-10s may have brought down one of the Rafale fighters, the French fighters that the Indian side uses. And undoubtedly, the Pakistanis have used their HQ-9 anti-aircraft defences, anti-aircraft missiles, which again may have been rather effective. So I think the Indians might have been surprised by the technical abilities that Pakistan seems to have absorbed with some of their Chinese equipment, but they won't have been surprised by the bellicosity of Munir because they rather expected that. And partly India's response has been to try to, as it were, teach Munir a lesson that they really are prepared to do whatever it takes. And indeed, they've deployed a carrier battle group of their Western fleet, and it's sitting only 300 miles off Karachi, which is a sort of threat to go in for a more general war unless the Pakistanis found a way of backing down from this position. Unfortunately, the international community has given them a line that they can both top out at, which seems to be where we are this evening.
Yeah, an off-ramp for both sides. And just a final quick thought, if you would, Michael, on the situation in Ukraine. It's been a day of ceasefire discussion, hasn't it? What are you taking away from what we've heard in Kyiv?
Yeah, I mean, a big challenge from Kyiv. What they're really saying is we all now agree, the big powers of Europe and Ukraine, and now the United States, we all agree, we're all on the same page. And this is the first time that the US and Europe have been on the same page on this for a good couple of months. We agree that we will implement a ceasefire starting on the 12th of May, which is Monday. And you, President Putin, are now being challenged to go along with it. And of course, the threat behind that is a big increase in sanctions, not just European sanctions, but maybe a bigger increase sanctions, which by implication would be on oil prices and possibly on gas prices as well. But as Dominic was saying earlier on in the package, we could have done this a lot earlier, and it's not entirely clear that Russia would respond to this. But undoubtedly, this is the biggest pressure that Putin has been put under for quite a long time.
Well, Michael, in the last few moments, literally as you've been speaking, we have had a response from the Kremlin, this coming from the state news agency, and it simply says Russia is to think about the proposal for the 30-day ceasefire. Moscow has its own position. Now, what do we read into that?
Yeah, I'm sure they are thinking about it. I mean, they've got to be very careful about this. But if I had to guess, my guess would be they'll find another way of not responding on Monday, but to say, well, we'll enter into discussions about something that we might do quite soon. I mean, this is the way they do it. Putin's an old KGB man. He's been doing this all of his life. He will find a way, I guess, of actually stringing it along. So not rejecting it, keeping the idea in play, but not doing it on Monday, because that would look as if he was caving in to Western pressure. And he doesn't feel that he needs to do that because he thinks that on the battlefield he's still doing well. Actually, he isn't doing so well, but he thinks he's doing well. He thinks he will prevail. And so he'll string this out, I'm sure, beyond Monday. We'll see if I'm right.
OK, we will. We'll probably get you back on Monday and ask you about it again. Thank
There was a real ceasefire violation in Kashmir. That's the stupidest analysis I've heard anyone done. Yeah. Now we understand whose government we will form next. We will tolerate corruption for once, but not terrorism. We will tolerate corruption for once, but not terrorism. If Indira Gandhi was here now, instead of ceasefire, there would have been independent Balochistan, just like Bangladesh became independent in 1971. Le aao Indira ko. Rahul's 0.00001% of Indira. So no. As long as it doesn't involve the analysts directly, they can speak whatever bullshit they want. That's why your government is pressed on their pants and beg for ceasefire. Unidentified object. He says aliens attacked India again. Article 3 of Indian Constitution did not give autonomy to Kashmir. Professor Michael needs to do some study on status of Kashmir. Ceasefire to Srinagar under attack. Sorry, is this your expert? What a disgrace. Where is Yalda Hakim by the way it didn't fit into your narrative? Pakistan in violating ceasefire agreement within 3 hours, India shows restraint. Don't be naive to think that Pakistan will follow rules. Pakistan don't understand the meaning of ceasefire. They thought it was increased fire. காமெடி பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கீங்க டேய் எங்க போனாலும் கமெண்ட் செக்ஷன் மட்டும் ரொம்ப டேங்கா இருக்கு கைஸ் ஐ டோன்ட் நோ எக்ஸாக்ட்லி வை எங்க போனாலும் ஏதாவது ஒரு டேங்காவே வச்சிருக்காங்க நெக்ஸ்ட் பாகிஸ்தான் broke ceasefire, Pakistan hardware working, almost all Pakistan airbase got hit by Indian missiles. Joke of the century. Yeah, on Godi media screens only. Shortest ceasefire in history broken by Pakistan. What a lot of BS, they heavy shelling and firing from Pakistan too. This gentleman doesn't know the history of countries. He misses a lot of points. Is this gentleman really a defense or rather India-Pakistan expert? எல்லாரும் ஆக மொத்த கடுப்பில் தான் இருக்காங்க, ஒன்றும் பிரயோஜனம் இல்லை. ஸோ நான் அது வரைக்கும் பண்ண ஸ்ட்ரீம் உங்களுக்கு பிடிச்சிருக்குன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். நான் தொடர்ந்து ஸ்ட்ரீமை முடித்துக் கொள்கிறேன். இன்னொரு நல்ல ஸ்ட்ரீம் உங்களை சந்திக்கிறேன். பீஸ் அவுட்.